we present to you Dr. Boyd Graves.
Thank you all very much, and certainly after last evening and the level of professionalism of the people here in New Jersey, unmatched. We have been around this country and around the world, but the level of professionalism and the events of the last maybe 36 hours show that we have something here in New Jersey, that indeed New Jersey is becoming the first state to address the issue of the synthetic origin of HIV and AIDS. Indeed, the documentation is overwhelming. And I'm just going to speak for a few moments and allow those of you to have questions to then present them. But what we are saying here by this press conference today is that indeed, if there was a federal virus development program that preceded HIV and AIDS, that program needs to be reviewed. Am I right or wrong? Am I right or wrong? If there was a federal virus development program that preceded the greatest onslaught of death in the history of the world, then why don't we review that program? Well, you know why? First, we have to recognize that there was indeed a federal virus program, and we can do that, and we can do that right now. We're doing it here in New Jersey. The program is right here in front of this table, the virus program in the United States of America. This is the program booklet from 1978, the last of the booklets. We had HIV and AIDS in 1979. I believe that is a correct statement. Is that a correct statement? That in the late 1970s, something began enveloping the people of Africa, and something began enveloping the white promiscuous homosexuals of New York at the same time. An earthquake with 2 epicenters. Well, what is the answer for that? The answer for that is that if you have an earthquake that has 2 epicenters, you have someone behind the curtain manipulating something. And how do we know that? We know that because there is a blueprint. If you could hold that for me in some fashion. Here is the blueprint. The blueprint for HIV and AIDS. It is the 1971 research logic of the U.S. Special Virus Program. Here is the blueprint. And the reason why this document is so significant, because it shows the mindset of my government to design, produce, and proliferate a special virus. A virus that only targets certain persons, as is evidenced by the epidemiology. The U.S. Special Virus is the U.S. HIV program. The reason why we had 2 earthquakes or 2 epicenters at the same time was because here the final phase, the clinical trials, it was placed in the smallpox vaccines that went to Africa. Thus, as smallpox ended, HIV and AIDS began. Every epidemiology that we have regarding the beginning of HIV and AIDS shows that as smallpox ended, HIV and AIDS began in mass in Africa. And that defies the fact that 1 African and 1 monkey and 1 African and 1 monkey in that syndrome. HIV and AIDS began in mass in the late 1970s as a result of the U.S. Special Virus Program and the complementation of that vaccine with this special virus that shows the development of HIV over a period from 1962 to 1978. Thanks for holding that, because I don't want you to stand up here all the way. The point is, there are 15 of these progress reports of the U.S. Special Virus Program. These progress reports need to be reviewed by the best and the finest medical doctors and scientists in the world. We demand it. We demand it. How dare you have a federal virus development program that precedes the greatest onslaught of murder in the history of the world, and you don't want to acknowledge the program, and you certainly don't want to review it? The people demand it. We demand a review of the U.S. Special Virus Program, and I'll address any question on this issue, and we will debate any person in this country or around the world on this issue. This federal program lies at the heart of HIV and AIDS. It needs to be reviewed. I hope you join me in that acknowledgement. Thank you very much. Here's our second point. If there is a cure for AIDS that has been patented by the United States and it is still on the shelf, that cure needs to begin to be placed into clinical trials. Am I correct? Correct. So if the United States has already patented the cure for AIDS, then we want to get it off the shelf. Is that correct?
Yes.
The cure for AIDS is U.S. patent number 5676977. Let me say it again. That's 5676977. Go to www.uspto.gov and put that number in. I challenge anyone to do that in the next 5 minutes. Run to the library and come back here and say it doesn't exist, because it does exist. Here is your cure for AIDS that has been patented by this government in 1997. It will be 10 years that the cure for AIDS has been on the shelf. We want the clinical trials of the cure for AIDS to start today.
That's right.
Our angle here is that if we put aside all of the chatter, all that we thought we knew about HIV and AIDS, and that would include that French Gallo-Montaigne thing, what we find is that let us clear our mind. Let us review what is in these progress reports and then make our assumptions. Because on this issue, what you will find is that is just a subterfuge. This thing between the Gallo, the United States, and the French. You find Dr. Robert Gallo intimately familiar with the progress reports of the development of AIDS. Dr. Robert Gallo was a project director for the development of HIV and AIDS. He has been critical in the development of HIV and AIDS, not in finding out what HIV and AIDS is, in making HIV and AIDS. And so then you go to the French. Well, Dr. Graves, are the French incriminated by the progress reports? So what you're asking there, sir, is Dr. Montaigne's name in these progress reports? Yes, it is. This is a concerted effort by the governments of the world, under the World Health Organization, to reduce the populations primarily of the Third World, as is evidenced by a number of U.S. government documents, particularly National Security Study Memorandum 200 from December of 1974, that Dr. Henry Kissinger presented at the World Population Conference in Bucharest, Romania in 1974. The outline for reducing the population of the Third World, because in essence as a threat to the United States and the Aryan race in essence, but also to reduce the population of the Third World vis-a-vis a means other than the atomic bomb, which would also destroy the infrastructure of Africa, but in a means that destroys the people of Africa, so Africa's resources are left for the United States and intact for the United States. These are in writing. National Security Study Memorandum, NSSM 200, represents the most graphic description of the U.S.'s plan to depopulate the Third World. Now, how did the homosexuals get in there? I'd be happy to answer that if that's a portion of your question.
That's part of your question.
Yes, sir. What they figured out was that in 1973, the conference was in Asilomar, California, A-S-I-L-O-M-A-R. The Asilomar Conference in 1973 chose homosexuals, I don't know if they chose specifically white homosexuals, but it appears that they did, as a test group to counter the reaction from Africa that we were only doing this to their society. In NSSM 200, the African leaders balked at the fact that the United States is getting ready to do to Africa's citizens something that it wasn't willing to do to its own white citizens here in the United States. So they specifically recruited 1,086 white homosexuals to take an experimental hepatitis B vaccine. All 1,086 men died of AIDS.
How are you? I'm looking at a copy of the patent, and I see words like production, isolation, detection, and I'm not a doctor. Can you just translate for me how this translates into a cure?
Which patent number are you reading? Which patent number is she reading? Ma'am?
I'm looking through it to see.
Because I think what you're reading is, just on what you just said, you're not reading from 5676977.
This is Gallo's patent.
4647773.
Okay.
Let me address that.
Okay.
Here she's talking about a patent from the United States that was filed in April of 1984. At the same time, the United States acknowledged that they finally knew what the mystery illness was. That was April of 1984. Dr. Robert Gallo and Secretary of Health and Human Services Margaret Heckler, I believe, in 1984. What you'll find is that as they went to the podium to tell the United States people that they knew what the mystery illness was, here Dr. Gallo was filing a patent for the continuous production of HIV. Of course they knew what it was. The patent that you're speaking of there, and let me give that number again, is 4647773. It is how you make AIDS continuously. How dare them? It is the culmination of this federal program, the special virus. That here, that patent there shows that HIV is an invention. It is an intellectual property. HIV is synthetic. That it had nothing to do with an African and a monkey. How dare our foolish society, how dare the comatose mentality of both black and white people in this country to believe that an African and a monkey can do something in such a fashion, and not only once. Remember, they have created 3 HIV viruses. We just deal with the primary one. But that 3 monkeys and 3 Africans at the same time in history can do something to create the greatest pandemic in the world. Who is being fooled here? In light of the progress reports of every experiment and every contract of this secret federal virus surveillance program, I am appalled. Because I believe in our Constitution. I always have. I've always thought that I had a right to life. These documents prove we do not. It is time for us to wake up. It is time for us to respond and to demand a review of the U.S. Special Virus Program. And since it's happening here in New Jersey, in Asbury Park, this day, we have begun something here today that is irreversible. That's right. And if the media and the press here and Asbury Park are genuine, and many of us believe you are not, then you will cover this story, and we will break this story open to the American people and around the world. It is time for review of the federal program that made HIV and AIDS. It is time for an end to HIV and AIDS, and we can do that. Our collective efforts can do that.
So, Doc, I want to be very clear that what she is looking at is not what you or others purport to be the patented cure, but actually the patent on AIDS itself.
That's the patent on AIDS itself.
Wow.
Can I have the patent number again for what
Yeah, the cure patent is 5676977. You go to www.uspto.patentandtrademarkoffice.gov.gov. It says patents on the left, you click on that. It says search, you click on that. It says patent number search, you click on that, and you put that number in. It'll take you 2 minutes to see, here is the cure, patented by the United States for HIV and AIDS. HIV and AIDS is synthetic, and so is the cure. The cure is silver 4, oxygen 4. Silver 4, oxygen 4, the combination of which allows for a systemic cleaning of your blood. That's exactly what it does. Your blood is like the water in a swimming pool. You put a pebble in the swimming pool, the water becomes clear. You put something in your blood system, your blood becomes clear, your blood is contained, and it stays that way. It'll be 6 years that I took the Tetrasil. It's a one-time infusion. It takes about 20 minutes. 6 years, and that's all that I've had. My records are maintained by the VA hospital system. Not that it's the best hospital system, but my records are maintained by my government. 6 years ago, I took that one-time dose. It is cheap. It is effective. You know, in a free press, this is what our people are putting across the world in Africa. AIDS cure found. Because by golly, by God, it's been sitting on the shelf waiting for us to wake up from our comatose mentality and find it. And they're saying so in Africa. AIDS cure found. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But then don't patent it in the first place. And since you patent it, then let's test it. That's all that we are saying. How dare you allow the patented cure for AIDS to sit on the shelf and smile in our face in the process? What kind of country is this? And if the media here can't get the question, I don't know where any place else can. You have some of the brightest people in this country, perhaps even sitting in this room right now. Either we wake up and stand up and fight this, or we all perish together.
Yes.
And in that regard, what we're talking about here is the infectious agent of HIV and AIDS itself. It appears to be that little 6-sided mycoplasma. In fact, they have them on the cover of these progress reports. And this may scare you, and I hope that it does. Because on the cover of the schematic of the federal program, this is what it looks like. And you see a big old rat over here, but you see a human over here, you see a vial here, but you see something very strange at the top. Now, I recognize that I'm in a land of Bible scholars, am I right? And I'm just trying to make sure. I'm in the land of Bible scholars. Because the Bible has some things in it that appear to be predicatory. And one of those things is a number. There's a number associated with the Bible, isn't there? 666? Well, I'll show you something how heinous this government is. On the cover of this U.S. Special Virus Program are these little microplasmas here at the top of the noon hour. And they are six-sided figures, correct? And there's 3 sixes there? 666 at the noon hour of the U.S. Special Virus Program. That's how in your face this federal program is. 666 at the noon hour of this federal program. That is just how heinous this federal program is. Now you're looking for your 666? Well, now you done found it. And now that you done found it, it's time for you to do something about it. Or what? The beast wins? It appears to be, I don't want the beast to win. That this federal program needs to be reviewed. Now that I know that you got 666 on the cover. I hope you're on our side. I hope you will unify and we unite and we bring forth the evidence that we have. How dare this government, how be so transparent to allow for a constitution that alludes to be the most democratic constitutional government in the history of the world. Yet at the same time, to have a heinous federal genocidal program of a stealth weapon that contagious for a selective group. We're only 12% of the population, yet we're 50% of the AIDS cases. Hello? No, that doesn't even wake us up yet, because we have the comfort, perhaps, of our faith, which will carry us on into the afterlife. Some of us aren't trying to get there yet. And we certainly aren't trying to get to the afterlife at the hands of a heinous government, bolstered on evil.
Yes, sir.
How dare them tell me I have a right to life? I am fighting for my right to life, and if that includes yours, then join me. You know, it was very difficult because we spoke on this last evening about the comatose mentality that we have, where we have been afforded the luxuries of the things that we indulge in. As I was saying last evening, you give a black man sex, religion, sports, music, movies, and food. It's hard to tell him anything further. So what we're breaking through is this comatose mentality that everything is okay, everything's going to be all right, as we present now the stark evidence that everything is not okay, and to try to wake up, to re-educate all at the same time. So it is a complex kind of solution. From the evidence standpoint, the U.S. flowchart from 1971 shows that specific experiments were worked on as early as 1971 to inhibit, control, and to vaccine against HIV, as is evidenced by the flowchart document. So our cause is simple. We began by reviewing the immunological control section of the program that made HIV. That's again another reason why the origin of HIV is important, because it will and does lead to the solution. That we can show the experiments from 1972 to the present, that indeed if we review these early experiments, we'll find some of the keys that we're allegedly looking for here in the modern day. But this is all set up, as is evidenced by, again, the flowchart document, that indeed this is systemic, that there was a design, purpose, plan, and intent of the United States to make this thing. So by reviewing the immunological control section experiments, that'll give us our first insight as to what they developed, because the flowchart proves that they developed inhibitors for HIV, they developed control of HIV before they released it. That's why we're so focused here. That here we have a blueprint to go back on with respect to how they put it together. If we certainly have the blueprint that they put it together with, we have then the blueprint to take it apart.
Question, Doc. I guess it's twofold. Where can one download the flowchart that Tyrone is holding up?
Yes.
If someone wants to download that.
Sure. My website is www.boydgraves.com. B-O-Y-D. We have the flowchart here in the audience today for those who want it. The fact of the matter is it's one of the greatest document finds in the history of the world, whether you like it or not, because it is definitive proof. It is beyond reproach. It's beyond reproach. One of the greatest document finds in the history of the world, because it shows the design, the purpose, and the intent. Because that takes away their alley for saying that, oh, we were working on something, but it was an accident. Or we were working on something and it escaped. Here you show that you're going to place it into clinical trials. So there was no accident, no escape. It was by design, purpose, and intent. How dare you proclaim that yourself as the greatest democratic constitutional government in the history of the world, while at the same time you've got a Nazi-esque, Hitler-esque program in the back room aimed at the purposes of depleting the black populations of the world. That this is the whole story, whether you like it or not. If you want to debate the issue, Come on. But you've got to go through the evidence. You've got to go through your own government's documentation before you can get to me. And before you can even get to me, you've got to go through my maybe, perhaps I said yesterday, 30 scientists and medical doctors. Maybe it's 45 or 50 who have reviewed some of these progress reports and can tell you definitively. If we review this federal program, we will solve AIDS. If Asbury Park in New Jersey is going to lead in this direction, you have an opportunity before you to help and assist us in saving ourselves.
One more question, Doc, and you alluded to it with your 30 scientists. How have you been received, though you've been around the world, how have you been received by quote-unquote black leaders in the mainstream or from the religious, from the economic realm, entertainers? How have you been received by black leaders from these different fields that could draw attention even more to this area? Because Asbury Park, though we're a small city, we're going to fight, but sometimes you need that entertainer, a la Magic Johnson. Sometimes you need that political figure, a la Barack Obama. You know, sometimes you need a spiritual figure, a la Jesse Jackson, to help bring attention. Minister Farrakhan.
Yes.
How have you been received by black leadership in your quest to expose that?
You know, and I appreciate that question. Because in my world, in my heart, it takes all of us. And it's going to take all of us. However, many of us, through the slave system that we have grown up through in our past, we reach a certain level, and it's difficult for us to reach back for anybody else. In this regard, the so-called black leadership of the United States is something other than what it seems. That anyone can be episodic and grab a microphone when somebody else has done something, just as we saw recently with this Don Imus kind of scenario. And then you see us come out of the woodwork from a black leadership perspective. But it's a reflection of what the larger society, the white society, feels about black people, is that black people are episodic. And so therefore you can inject into black people, and into their thinking, events which distract them from the other events that are going on. So we are clearly being distracted here, as we have pointed out in a number of fashions here. They're in the back rooms every night making up some stuff. And we're in front of the TV with our feet up. Everything, and as I mentioned last evening, that, we're in the boat of religion. However, the waterfall is dead ahead. We're in the boat of religion, so the waterfall is dead ahead. And in that regard, the efforts here, as you mentioned, to get the word out is just so very important. But what we find from a black leadership perspective is that king of the mountain syndrome, that they're on top, the Sharptons, the Johnsons, with the exception of Minister Farrakhan, who I've had dinner with on 2 separate occasions, whose, as I have shared with him, that his rhetoric is not hollow, that indeed there appears to have been a master plan aimed at your detriment, and it appears to show itself as we look at the sequential history of the development of AIDS, which is also on my website under the timeline. And we take it back as to exactly what they were doing and when they were doing it. And the case in point would be, getting away from the where's our entertainers, where's our celebrities. We're trying for Oprah, we're trying for a number of other things. We've tried for Magic Johnson. All we can do is turn over the rock, and if it's hollow, it's hollow. We find that the entertainment and the black leadership rocks are hollow, that they indeed have got their own pockets filled to the detriment of you and I. I don't believe that they represent my interests, because if they represented my interests, they would be right here, right now, with these black leaders. Right here, right now. Here is a federal program that answers why your brother has died, answers why your sister has died. Here are the experiments and the contracts, and they would want to review this special virus program. But yet, there is nothing but silence from that which we call black leadership. Nothing but silence. And that's a challenge to you as well. And I'll tell you what happened to the black ministry, because we always look to the black ministry for their bravado, for their input, for their wisdom, for their leadership. When this first began, it was white homosexuals who were dying in this country, correct? White homosexuals. So we heard the bravado from the black ministry then, God's wrath, because it fit. It fit in order. Service promiscuous white homosexuals dropping dead. That's a good thing. So we thought. Now it's black women dropping dead. The number one group of HIV and AIDS today. I don't hear a peep from the black ministry. Where are you at today?
Come on.
Where are you at today?
Come on.
You see, they twisted you. They led you to believe that it was a gay disease. and that God gets rid of them kind of people. Well, no black woman I know is gay.
Come on.
Not a single black woman I know. So how are black women the number one group coming down with HIV and AIDS? And I'm begging on the table for a reason, to wake you up.
Yes, sir.
Where's our black ministry today? And if you have value with what you believe and you believe in truth, then stand up. Because here you have the evidence of a government that has faked you out time and time again. And these documents don't lie. You review them, you will see the experiments on black people. You will see the experiments on black women. You will also see the experiments, which I don't often mention, which I'm mentioning lately, of the breast cancer experiment. Why this rat symbol on the program, the progress reports, why the rat symbol has significance. Because in the DNA of female breast cancer are rat breast cancer cells. Now where do they come from? How does the black woman have rat cells in her blank body? So the further questions come out. How does a black woman have rat cells? How does a white woman have rat cells? Mouse memory tumor virus, MMTV, and breast cancer. Put it in. MMTV and HIV. Put it in on Google. Mouse memory. A rat breast disease. Mouse memory tumor virus. MMTV. So these are the further questions that we're going to demand that they answer. But right now, you all have had a federal virus program in this country that none of the people knew about. We want that program reviewed. Yes, sir.
Anyone else before we get started?
Thanks, Dr. Graves. I understand last week you had a conference with Dr. Marty McGinnis of the President's Advisory Council on HIV and AIDS, and I was curious to the fact of what the President's Advisory Council on HIV and AIDS, what their position is, what they're doing, and what action they're taking on the information, and exactly what information you gave them to act on.
Well, it's kind of convoluted, but nonetheless, thank you, Joel. This is Joel Bells, my publisher of my books, State Origin. This is my first book, State Origin, The Evidence of the Laboratory Birth of AIDS, and by the weekend, these will be here. But I also have a second book out called World War AIDS, the Third World War, because indeed it is. Our meeting with the government, teleconference last week with the United States President's Advisory Council was historic, because they came with the traditional attitude that you aren't anything. Whatever issue you're raising is frivolous. That we've done all that we can, Dr. Graves. Well, no, you haven't. And the whole conversation changed last week when we got into this issue of how about the patented cure? How about the cure for AIDS? And they were unaware. Here you have the President's Advisory Council unaware of their own U.S. patented cure that's been on the shelf for the last 10 years. How unacceptable. And that really changed the tenor of the conversation last week with the government. We're looking forward to this outswell here in Asbury Park in the New Jersey area to extend now into the next week as we go back to the United States government and ask for the follow-up as we proceed to get them to do their own job, and that is begin the clinical trials of your own cure. Hello, we're not injecting something into the process saying, try this. Here is your patented cure for AIDS. It's time to get off your butt. Here's your patented cure for AIDS. You talk about curing people, you talk about wanting to end HIV and AIDS, and yet you proliferate because you made it in the first place, then you've hid the cure for the last 10 years. You're a very evil government.
Any more questions? We'll take one or two more, then we'll get ready.
Yes, sir. Let's take that.
I'm Josh from Glassboro.
Yes.
I'm a student at Rowan University. Dr. Graves.
Oh, yes. Hey, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. Good to see you. All right.
I know that the United States patent cure was awarded or granted to Dr. Marvin Antelman from Israel. Does he currently own the rights to the cure?
Well, my response is, I don't care. We have found a way to make it. We make it. We put it out there. We're going to continue to do so. If he wants to be in the legal courtroom, we're ready to go. Bring him on as well. Because Dr. Antelman, he's also a rabbi. Dr. Rabbi, Rabbi Doctor, whatever they call it, to having both titles. But he's also he went to school with Robert Gallo at Albert Einstein University, Albert Einstein Medical College, wherever that is here in New Jersey. And it appears that he received this cure for AIDS as a payback to Dr. Gallo for something Dr. Gallo had stolen from him back in medical school. So our challenge to Dr. Antelman, Rabbi Dr. Antelman, is indeed if you are for the people, you should be proliferating your own cure. However, since you've allowed it to sit on the shelf, your lack of action speaks for itself, that he does not appear to be on the side of the people. That's why we're making making the Tetracell, silver 4, oxygen 4, and trying to get it out here to challenge the system, because they have laid stagnant on purpose, as we can prove, that their involvement in the development of HIV is integral. They are as liable as anything I know. We're proceeding now in the federal court in San Diego. The case number is 07-CV Civil 0453. That's in the federal court, 07-CV like Civil 0453. Our whole purpose is to exhaust the U.S. judicial system, the U.S. legal system, to show the full perpetration of the development of HIV and AIDS in the International Criminal Court of Justice, which I believe where this case will be solved. Because I don't believe that we can get a fair hearing of the facts here by a government that indeed is transparent in each and every way. That we have to exhaust the system here to then go after that which we're going after. But with regard to Dr. Antelman, if he has a problem with us providing and making the doses, tell him to come on. Yes, thank you.
And just to let you know, Dr. Antelman is from Antelman Technologies, and according to this information, he is a member of the Supreme Rabbinic Court, aka the Sanhedrin, the oldest established court in the world. So you can get his information online as well. Very interesting.
Yeah, I'm not so sure what that means either, if you know what I mean. Because the further you go back, that's the further we're going back to the time period and the era when there were no black people. And so when people put their minds together as to what they think they're doing, then they formulate these secret societies that have permeated the last 500 years of history. Now, come on with the secret societies. What are y'all doing in there? And now it's apparent what you're doing in there, because you're making up some stuff to eliminate a large portion of the population of the world. The depopulation programs of the United States are hideous. Indeed, if we are overpopulated in any parts of the world, how dare a government secretly make something and smile in your face while they watch you die? If we are overpopulated and there are too many people, perhaps should we just pick straws? We are currently suing the United States for these two right here, which we already have. However, they were in the archives, and when we inquired about them, these two progress reports became missing. This is the essence of the entire lawsuit. That here's progress report number 15 from the year 1978. It is missing in the archives. Here's progress report number 14 from 1977. These are the end progress reports of the federal program. This one contains the budget of the program from 1962 to 1978. Here is the full outline of what they were doing and their end reports that are now missing out of the archives, and we can show that they were there. Where are they now? Who removed them? We want these two progress reports replaced back into the archives, because I'll tell you something. After 30 years of these progress reports existing, collecting dust in the archives of the United States, and an inquiry is made into these documents, and then they suddenly go missing. Under the World Catalog Database, write it down, World Catalog Database, you can put in Special Virus Cancer Program, and you will find that there are 8 of these in the public domain. 8 of the 15 of the progress reports of HIV/AIDS are in the public domain under the World Catalog Database. Put in Special Virus Cancer Program. This patented cure for AIDS is the U.S.'s patented cure for AIDS. We don't need to go through any kind of review process of anybody else's cure for AIDS, and I recognize that there may be other remedies. However, when you have it as directly as we have it here, when you have that full patent and you've gone through it, to see that this is what they were working on for the specific purposes of curing AIDS. And the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office has a long-standing history that they do not issue patents for claims that cannot be met. And in this regard, with the U.S. patent having sat on the shelf for the last 10 years, I believe it is time. And if there are other things, and there are, that assist people with HIV and AIDS, I believe that they should be incorporated as well. However, we should move with direct speed to again begin the clinical trials of the Tetracell, particularly because it's so cheap. and particularly because it's so effective. We have within our reach the ability to end HIV and AIDS.
So, other questions? Again, let's give Dr. Gray I know, family, don't go home and stick your head in the sand and act like you didn't hear it. Because those of us that heard it, we are now responsible for what we hear. And that's what truth does. It forces you to the front. For Jesus said you should know the truth. And it will be the truth that will set you free. Not just the truth, but acting on the truth that we know. So those of us that are here today, we thank Dr. Gray for coming all the way from San Diego. Again, he will be at Salem Baptist Church tonight at 7 p.m. in Long Branch.